Head over to BoardGamePrices.com to find the best price on Eco's First Continent and thousands of other games. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we're going to be building competitively the First Continent. All sorts of water and grasslands and deserts and mountains and forests, all sorts of different animals like leopards and sharks and fish and elephants and you name it. Today we're going to be taking a look at Eco's First Continent by AEG. This is a 2 to 6 player game. It's sort of an engine building game where you're going to be managing your cards and getting new cards and trying to run engines, but it's also like Gamer Bingo. Let me show you. Ecos is a continent building game, and you're going to be building grasslands and desert and water and mountains and trees and animals like manatees and rhinos and antelopes and sharks and all sorts of other animals. You're going to be doing so and trying to build up combos and some engine building to score points. Now this game's about engine building and all about the cards in your hand and in front of you. And at the beginning of the game, you're going to get a starting card set of a different type of animal icon. Doesn't mean those are the only animals that are in that deck, but there's lots of different ones that you can start with. And once you get better at the game, you don't even have to use these. You can go through a drafting method to create your starting hand. You can still get a lot of cards later in the game. For example, if I was playing the Rhino deck, all the cards in the bottom left will have the Rhino on it. You'll separate them out. This will be my starting deck, and everyone will have 3 cards that they'll start with in front of them. The rest of them will be in their hand that they'll be able to play a little bit later during the game. Now each round of play, there'll be a Harbinger, or the active player. In this nice bag, they're going to pull out one of these huge, chunky elemental tokens. They're going to flip it up and they're going to put it down in front, and everyone is going to be able to possibly place a cube on that icon. So I've placed it in front of us just to make it a little bit easier to see, and we see if we have any of those icons. If so, we can place one of our cubes. Everyone starts with 7 cubes, and we can place it on it just like that. This is sort of a bingo mechanism, similar to another game like Rise of Augustus. Now, if I had more than one card or more than one of those icons, I can still only place it on one of them, but you got to decide which card you're trying to go with, because once you finish this, you'll complete a card and you'll basically activate an ability on that card. Now, everyone has this little player aid start tile here. It actually shows you how many of each of those different icons are on these elemental stones that are in that bag. So this one, that's one of the most readily available when there's 6 of them versus some of the others. Now let's say the next one that comes out to Sun. We'll go ahead and put this just like that. And by the way, if all your cubes are on cards and you want to play something else, you can take one from one card and move it to somewhere else. Now let's fast forward a bit. Let's say another Sun came out and we want to complete this card. We put it just like this. Now, we get to activate this card. So these come off and go back into our supply, and we activate this. This says gain one of these and one of these, which is really cool because we essentially can do it here. And here we're going to be able to complete this one too, but you must finish completing a card, resolving all the actions on a card before another one. Now this one says play a card. Now if you remember, you also start with a handful of cards and you can play one of those down to your tableau so you can start working on those ones as well. Also, when you finish a card, you will turn it. You can see here there's 4 leaves. We now will turn this. There'll be 3. If we do it again, there'll be 2. If we do it again, there'll be 1, and afterwards that card is gone. Some cards that are really powerful might actually have a lot less, like this one here, the shark. It's a really powerful card, but it only activates once and then it's gone. But since we have this one now, we also can activate this. So you're linking together different combos here. This says we can place an ocean, a water or a desert. So let's go ahead and place an ocean here, and it says gain 4 points if it's adjacent to an ocean and a grassland or a desert. So I put it here, it's next to an ocean and it's next to a grassland, so we're gonna gain 4 points. And points are public knowledge and they're tracked on a board. Now we also get to gain this, that's a wild, so we can put it on anything, and we'll put it on this because this is the hardest one to get. It usually from top to bottom will show you the easiest to the hardest ones to get. And again, this one has been activated, so we'll then go flip it like that. Now this game is simultaneous, so when someone pulls one of these out, everyone is placing cubes at the same time, and if more than one player has a card finished, essentially you're supposed to yell Eco, and then if more than one player says it, then it goes from the player who drew the tile, and then clockwise. But most of the game is really simultaneous. Now eventually one of these will be pulled, that's a wild, everyone gets to place it on any one thing. These will all go back in the bag and the bag will pass to the next player, who will be the active player until they draw a wild. But keep in mind, even though the active player is pulling them out, everyone gets to play simultaneously. Some of them allow you to put down animals into the continent and add them, like this one's a manatee. Now I showed you these in the beginning, but these are some really cool holders that have all the different animals in there. In this case, I'm gonna place that manatee. Let's just say I finished that card. And some of the animals have requirements. Some animals have multiple possible places, like the elephant can be placed in the desert or the grassland. Some cards allow you to place a forest or a mountain, and this can be important because some animals, like the cheetah, can only be placed where they have a forest. So as the game goes on, the continent's gonna be building, there's gonna be forests, animals, and different tiles added in different ways. Now there's actually two types of cards in the game. We have these red backs and the blue backs. The red ones essentially help build the map. Now they can help you score points too, but they're essentially building things to the map, where these ones are more about scoring. And even in your start hand, you'll have a certain amount of these and about twice as many of those. Now this game's all about setting up combos. Now the shark is really hard to get out, and it will only activate once. It's a one time per game and then it's gone, but it's very powerful. You can put a shark down in a water like this, and this says you gain 5 points. Plus, you can move the shark up to 4 spaces and remove any animals in those spaces and gain 4 per animal. So I'm gonna gain 5 just for placing it, and I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and essentially, obviously, you can only move through water, but I had just got 4 more animals that were removed, and that would have been another 16 points. That would have been a 21 point card. Of course, it would have taken a little bit of the game to sort of set this card up, and it's a one and done type of thing. Now you might be asking, well, what happens when people pull those element tokens and you don't have any cards to put them on? Well, what you do is you take the start thing, and anytime you don't want to or can't place a cube, you turn this. The second time you turn it, you can immediately activate this and you gain a card, and then you basically reset this back to start. We'll talk about gaining a card in a second. If you do it another time, you can gain another cube. So you'll have an 8th cube, and then a 9th, and a 10th, and it lets you work on more cards at a time. Then you can play a card from your hand and then reset. So I like this, kind of gives you, when you don't place anything, gives you some options there. Now when you take a card, you can take 2 cards off the top, either both from the same deck or 1 from each deck. You keep one and you put the other one face up next to that deck. Instead of taking it off the top, you can take 1 face up card from either deck, and that's how you can gain cards throughout the game. But you do start with quite a many that you can actually even win the game without even getting any additional cards, but this will give you some different strategies. That's the whole game. The game will end as soon as a player gets to 80 points. Or if you want to play a shorter game, you can play to 60 points. All right, the first thing I like about this is the cool theme. I like realistic themes. I like how this comes together. You're building the first continent. Every game's gonna feel different because everything's gonna look different. Players are gonna be playing different cards. And I like that you're sort of building things, and the theme, sort of the mechanisms match the theme, where as I showed you, you know what? The shark gets in the water and it's gonna eat a bunch of things and get a lot of points, and a lot of those mechanisms seem to fit well as well. Great production. This stands out on the table. It looks nice. You know, those big chunky element tokens are huge. Those nice animal holder tokens. You know, everything here just looks nice. The presentation's really good on the table. In the intro, I mentioned gamer bingo, and I don't say that in a negative way. I say it in like, I love it when games take simple mechanisms, even some from original classic games that everyone knows and loves, and brings them into gamer style games. You know, instead of saying B54, we say sun, right? And it's even more so of a gamer version of that than, say, Rise of Augustus, which was a Spiel des Jahres nominee many years ago that had that thing where you pull out of a bag, everyone places something on a card. That was, at the time, I called that gamer bingo, but that was much more of a, say, gateway game, where this definitely has way more going on with it. I wouldn't play, this is definitely not a gateway game. This is at the very least a next step game, but even more so, I'd say it's definitely a gamer's game, but uses that bingo mechanism and uses it really well. I liked it in Augustus, and I really like it here as well. I like that you're gonna get starting card sets of all different types, or once you know the game well, you can draft, which the game really opens up there. Now, when you're playing, and you can also mix and match. If a bunch of people playing are experienced, they can draft, and the other players that have not played before, they can just play a starting deck. And it's cool because now, you know, if someone watches me do that shark thing once in any game, anybody that has that rhino deck, they're gonna be like, okay, watch out. They're gonna be putting the water out. Let's try to mess that up. Let's try to, some of the cards allow you to move animals around and things like that. And so you can kind of watch for things like that. But if you're drafting, you don't really know for sure what strategies they're going for. But the starting decks are fine. They work well. They're balanced. Even the 3 starting cards give you sort of some little engine thing to start working on. I like that aspect. I like this game. You're building your engine, and then you're running it a few times, hopefully. In the Sharks' case, just once. And for a lot of points, but then you're rebuilding it, meaning, okay, I've built this thing up, I've spent a lot of turns setting this thing up with a shark and go in the water and eat 4 things, get my 21 points, but it's gone. So now what do I do? Well, I'm going to be getting more cards and looking for other engines to build, hopefully getting cards of things that are somewhat set up on the board already, you know? Think of Takinoko, where you're getting some cards, you're like, oh, okay, well, I only have to put 1 tube of bamboo there, and I got this one, you know, stuff like that. It has that little bit into it, and I like how you're building up an engine, you're running it a bunch of times, getting as much out of it, those cards are gone, okay, what's the next engine I can build? That's fun, to me. I like that you're sort of setting up those big scoring combos, as I mentioned. The shark, there's another one, there's a cheetah, where you can put it right in the middle, and all the adjacent animals it eats for a lot of points. So there's other sort of bigger scoring combos like that in all the different decks as well. I like that gaining the benefits if you're not using the elements. So, hey, something's drawn, you either can't use it or you don't want to. You can spin your start tile, and then after a few times you can either get a cube or you can gain a card, or you can play a card, and that really, it's really cool because it gives you things to do on turns that you don't want to use them, which still benefits you in the end. What others do in this game definitely can affect you in good or bad ways. It's simultaneous, which is great. Now, granted, as people are doing things, sometimes they have to do it in order, but a lot of times, even when multiple people are doing things, it can be done simultaneously because they're adding things to their other cards and things. But the way that others can affect you in either good or bad ways. Again, like Takinoko, where somebody adds a tile, like, oh, or they eat the bamboo and you're like, oh, I was trying to put something on there. Similar to this. Now, in this case, everyone can see which cards you have out. And so they can look at what you're going for and sort of mess you up on purpose. But again, some of the cards you have are in your hands that you're planning. That shark card, I would have been holding that back and not playing it until, you know, it was time to play it, and boom, it's done and it's gone, and people didn't know it was coming. But as people are doing things, sometimes they know they're doing it, but sometimes they don't know. They're just doing stuff, they're paying attention to their own thing, and sometimes it can affect what you're doing, or even some of the cards in your hand that you were planning on setting up for a little bit later, and it affects you. There's a lot of player interaction here that I like. I like that when you're gaining more cards, you've got the 2 stacks to choose from, the points ones or the map setup ones, and you can take, you know, 1 of each or 2 of both, or you can take one that's face up. That's cool. Gaining cards and rebuilding new engines. And I like that in this game, as you add more players, it doesn't really add that much more time to the game. And I think the game is more interesting with more players because the continent's going to be built, more people are doing different things, and it gives you more options. The red cards, I didn't show those on this. Actually, I think the shark one was a red card. Those are impact cards that allow you to remove things from the board, gives you more flexibility. Like if someone messes something up, you can be like, oh, I could play this card, so remove this. That'll get me back on track. I like that too. Overall, this is a really cool game. Now, is there anything I didn't like about the game? This isn't necessarily a negative, but I felt the game was definitely better with more players. As I just mentioned, more options come out on the board. Now, there is a 2-player variant I didn't talk about. You start with more cards, and you actually pull 2 of those elements at a time, and it helps sort of kind of keep things going quicker with less players. I wouldn't recommend this for new players because with having so many extra cards, there's a lot more to think about. If you're not familiar with the game, it could be a little bit much. And I still do prefer it with more players because it does seem like different strategies and more players are playing different things, and it just seems to grow a little bit faster. The spinning of the cards makes sense as you spin them, as you activate them, and you know when to remove the card, but it also makes reading the text on the cards really hard. Now, granted, you should say, well, you've already activated it once or twice, you should know what the card does. Yes, but sometimes you're going to have a whole lot of cards, and they're all going to be at different spots, and it's kind of hard to it's a lot to digest. I would have preferred seeing, maybe even just leaving the leaves on there, but just giving us like red cubes to put on the side or something like that. And once it's done, it's gone. I would have much have rather that. Of course, it would have increased the cost of the game, but I would have liked that better. The 80-point mark, in my opinion, makes the game a little too long for what it is. I feel like I've gotten engines running and I've gotten meat out of the game by the time we get to the 60 points. And there is a variant in the back, as I showed you, that you could just play to 60 points. So that's what I play. The 80 for me is just a little bit too long, but that's a personal preference. You might like the longer game. And then some of the rules, there's some little rules there like moving animals. Animals can move in spaces that they don't normally can be placed in, but it can't go from land to water or water to land. Now some of those make sense, but there's little rules like that. And then placing trees and when you can place them and how many each trees a place can hold. There's a little bit of sort of fiddly rules there, but they make sense once you've played it. But I really wish that the back of that start tile had those little extra rules there so you can kind of look at that in there. The tile didn't need to be double-sided for what it said. I would have rather seen those little itty-bitty rules that are hard to remember on the back of that. That's it. So overall, I really enjoyed this game. This is really cool. For me, this is sort of the best way I can describe this is it was a cross between Rise of Augustus by the bingo and placing the cubes to Evolution from North Star Games, which is like, okay, you've got these different animals, they're doing different things, you're comboing together cards with this card and trying to score points. And then also Takenoko, as I mentioned, as you've got these goals you're going for, but the board's changing, and it might change for the good or the bad, and that sort of thing. So those three games kind of have come together to this a little bit. And I really enjoyed it. Now, they're going to be demoing this. This video is coming out right before Gen Con 2019. AEG is going to be demoing this all day on Sunday, dedicated at their Gen Con booth, so check it out there. This game, I believe, is going to be available shortly after Gen Con, or closer towards the October time frame. I'm not exactly sure, but that's what it looks like right now. But you can check with AEG to see when this might be coming out. They also might be playing it at what they call their big game night at Gen Con as well. So you can, if you're at Gen Con, stop by and ask them if you can play it on any other day other than Sunday. This has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games by helping you find the next one you'll love. Did you miss the Game Topper 2.0 Kickstarter? Have no fear, it's not too late to get in on the ultimate gaming accessory. Convert your table into a high-quality gaming table with a fully portable Game Topper system and take advantage of some of the best 3mm premium gaming mats in the industry. New styles, new sizes, and new accessories can be yours. Upgrade every game you play by late backing now at GameToppersLLC.com.